All right. It says we're live, and we are live. Sometimes you just never know with this StreamYard. So, welcome back to another show with the Author's Dilemma. It is Thursday night, and we are so happy that you're spending your time with us. If you're here live, be sure to say hello. And if you're watching or you're listening to us in the future, wherever you are, be sure to reach out and say hello. Send us a line at authorsdilemma@gmail.com, or just leave a comment, or you can subscribe. That'd be even better. All right, so I am J.E. Jack, and I write urban thriller or urban fantasies and horror and paranormal thrillers.
Hyrum Hawks, I write hard sci-fi and sci-fantasy.
I'm Jennifer Carr. I write Christian romantic suspense and clean contemporary romance.
I'm Stephen Brayton. I write mystery, horror, and working on a sci-fi.
Nice.
And that's fantastic. And I actually kind of messed up. I should have said, hey, and we have a special guest, so that way when you hear that voice from Stephen, it'll be like, oh, where'd this guy come from? So tonight, like I said, we have a special guest with us, Stephen Brayton, and here in a second, we will introduce him properly. Actually, Jen will introduce him properly. But first, let's talk. We're not going to really talk about our business this week because we have a special guest, but let's talk about the news. What's going on in the author's world?
Well, let me tell you what I saw this week, and it has been a wild conversation, and it circles around ARCs, so the advanced reading copies. And so we kind of talked about, I think we mentioned last week there had been talk about ARCs being pirated and that kind of thing. Well, now there are authors who are requiring non-disclosures for ARC readers, and I thought that one is going to get expensive because you're talking legal fees when you start pulling in NDAs, but then you're also going to start narrowing down who can and can't read your books. And I saw a lot of readers very upset and were like, I just won't ARC read anymore. And I'm like, no, we need you. I won't make you sign one. So anyway, I thought that was kind of an interesting bit of news this week.
This is interesting because just recently I read an article about the overtaking of our culture by NDAs. And it explained how over the last decades, NDAs have gone from being kind of a rarely used thing except in business to being you can't go into a A-list party unless you sign one. There are literally stacks of physical NDAs at the entrance to every A-list party, and you have to sign it before you can walk in that door.
That's wild.
So I think NDAs actually have become almost ubiquitous, and it's partly the era we live in where litigiousness has gotten to become almost an expression of art anyway. And
I think it's also
it's changed.
And then also people are like, okay, so social media is such a quick tool to get information out there, and unfortunately, you have people that will, go to a party and be the first to share what they see because they are looking for social proof or they're looking for social standing. So they're going to, spill the beans as quick as they can. So I get that. But as far as like people reading my books, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a certain
I want them
level
to talk about.
Yeah. I mean,
what's the point in having somebody read them in advance and leave a review if you're going to put them under an NDA and say you can't talk about it? I don't know.
Well, the only thing I was thinking about was that it reminded me of was an incident I heard at one of my Sisters in Crimes meeting, was that one of the authors who's had about a dozen books out discovered that one of her books has been mentioned or referenced or some text or material used on an AI site. And she had to go back and say, hey, knock it off. You can't do that because they were using that book to teach AI.
But I mean, an NDA.
That's interesting. NDA doesn't stop that. That just, in the end, that's my day job. I have a side business where I'm working on AI, and that's a whole nother can of worms. But basically, the conversation that the world is not having yet is that AI is not a human being. It's a tool. And so just because you use a tool doesn't mean that tool is inherently free to do whatever it wants. It's not got volition. And so anything an AI does, very soon society is going to realize the liability resides in the owner of the AI, and that's going to change the whole game.
Yeah,
Right.
that's so true. And that's so hard because I'm thinking, a couple of people who are uploading books to a free website or to an AI, whatever, they're going to ruin it for everybody. And so that just puts kind of a nail in the coffin for marketing, and one nail in the coffin anyway for marketing, because ARC readers are huge. They're important. They're the ones that get those early reviews out there. So anyway,
I'm just wondering, like, people that have done it. I mean, what was their? I'm just kind of wondering what their thoughts are. Like,
Yeah.
people that actually do it.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the? Yeah, I mean, what is the thoughts behind that? Like, what keeps them, that makes
I
no
would
sense
think
to
it
me.
has to do with the same people who post the pictures from the parties that they go to, those A-list parties.
Yeah.
They want to be the first to share it. They want to put somebody's
Right.
work out there that you can read it early. Look at me, I'm sharing with you. And that, I don't know, it's not right. It's unethical.
Well, see, my thing
Copyright.
is, but see,
Copyright covers everything.
right, and then also, if someone was doing some shady stuff with my works, I would just not ever associate with that person ever again.
Yeah.
And
It's free publish. It's free marketing.
no, I
If
know,
someone's doing
but
something shady.
I know,
I'm
but
like,
if
woohoo!
someone, yes,
Oh,
But I
but
don't-
okay.
yes.
One of the other circumstances, and this is so off topic, but one of the other circumstances,
Oh, no,
what
it's
happened
on.
was, what had happened was this woman took another author's book, translated it to Spanish, and called it her own.
Oh,
Whoa.
no.
That's
So
just
then,
theft. That's
right,
straight up
but
theft.
it's the same thing. When you're taking somebody's work and uploading it to a free website, you're taking it and giving it away. So anyway,
Well, that's
it's
wrong.
a whole other
That's all
can
wrong.
of worms. It is wrong. It's all, and there's no gray area. Like it's
Was it
unethical.
machine translated? Because if it was a good translation, I'm grateful and I'll just take it and use it.
But she
start
put her
selling
name
it.
on it. Yeah, I don't know. She put her name on it. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. But there are people out there, they don't have your best interest at heart. And
Oh,
so
no.
you just got to be careful.
There's a lot of people out there that don't have your best interest at heart.
For sure.
But
Yes.
don't remember, authors. It's not that. That's the minority.
Right.
It is
Yes.
not the majority. Most people are. They're trying to make things good.
Yeah. And take steps to protect yourself. Copyright your work. Safeguard your work. See who's going to be reading your work. Like filter out who's going to be reading your. I've actually got a blog post coming out next week about how to safeguard your work when it comes to uploading your ARCs, because it's a big deal and it's really simple to do. So
That would actually be a good topic to talk about. We'll have to put that down on a future episode to talk about that.
for sure.
How to protect your stuff.
I got it.
That'd be good. All right. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of tonight's show.
Who is this guy?
Who is this guy? Jen, you tell us.
I met Stephen through my podcast, Connected Conversations for Creators. We had a sit-down interview a few weeks ago, and I was like, hey, because his episode's not going to air until like the second half, the second half of the season, I was like, hey, I've got an idea. Let's have another sit-down, because this is a conversation that I think is interesting. Stephen has battled it out with some publishing issues, and he's still writing and still publishing. So when you hear all the things that he went through to get his book published, it will make you go, oh, yeah, I can do this.
And because we're broadcasting out of order, it's like time travel.
That's right.
We're skipping all over the place here.
That's right. Spoiler
So-
alert.
Yeah. So Stephen, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started? Just tell us whatever's on your mind.
Well, I have been an avid reader of mysteries and horror since I was a child. The Hardy Boys and the Alfred Hitchcock and the Three
The
Investigators.
Love that.
And Encyclopedia Brown for all those elementary kids out there, and I love those. And at some point, I thought, I can write this stuff. I want to write this stuff. So I just started writing short stories, and didn't really get serious until about 95, when the writing bug hit me pretty seriously, and I developed a character based on my martial arts training.
Mhm.
And Mallory Peterson was born, and I've just taken off from there. It took a while to get any traction because I was still learning the craft.
Mhm.
And then about 2001, I joined a writer's critique group. And if any writer, wannabe author, is thinking about doing something like that, please do join a critique group. Find a good one
Yeah, Jen and
where they
Josh.
give you where they give you positive and helpful advice, not just, oh, this is really good, I wouldn't change a thing. However, make sure that they're not getting personal either.
Right.
And speaking of that, I got to do a shout out to the Marion County Writers Workshop. They graciously suspended their meeting tonight, which I would be at, to have some of their listeners, some of the members listen in. So I'm hoping they're watching. It's a great group, full of some great people, some authors, some published authors. So anyway, time went on, and I finally did get contracted to a publisher in 2009. She published my book, and then 2010, I contracted with another publisher for another book. And then about 2014, everything seemed to be going well. I was trying to get some other books out there. Then about 2014, the first publisher closed because of health reasons. Then, so I'm starting over with that particular book. Then about a year or so later, the next publisher dies. So that publishing house closes, and there was a big mess up with royalties, and nobody took care of records and everything like that. So about 16 or 18 maybe, I got with another publisher. So this is my third, am I counting right? Who took some of the series, the Mallory Peterson series, took about 4 of the books and put them out. And then I'm looking around for some other, and I get another, I find another publisher, fourth publisher, for another standalone, possibly series book. And then I go with her for a couple of the fourth and the fifth in the Mallory Peterson series. The one who the publisher who put out the re-release of the first 3 books, I should say. COVID killed a lot of things, including businesses, and so they developed some health problems there with some of their contractees, and they closed. Meanwhile, the publisher who has published the standalone book and the other 2 in the Mallory Peterson series back in 21 dies.
It's not
and
funny.
nobody knows about it.
If I were a publisher, I would not take you because this sounds paranormal.
Oh my
gosh,
gosh.
are you taking notes?
So, and nobody knows it for a month. I get contacted by, it shows up on my spam file that, hi, are you an author from this publishing company? And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. So I call her up and she says, yeah, did you know she died? And I went, when? Earlier this month. Oh, so I'm scrambling around now because I have all of my books back now. I went from about 8 to 0. Now I'm having to start over, but I took it as a positive sign because it allowed me to go in and do some deep editing on some of these books, and I found another publisher for Alpha, the first of the Mallory Peterson series. And one of the questions I asked when she said, "Hey, we like your book, we'll take it," I said, "Wait a minute, what happens if you die?"
I'm sure that's a conversation starter. Well,
yeah, and I had to explain.
Never mind, we're not interested anymore.
I had to explain why I was asking that. So, so I have found her, and I found another publisher for for Night Shadows, the horror story, and I'm hoping they'll take the next in the series. And they're a pretty good publishing company that looks like they're doing some good things out there. And I've contracted with a third to get the standalone book published. I'm waiting for a second round of edits for that.
So
that's a
standalone
longer process.
What's that one about?
It's New Year Gone. It's about it harkens back to the noir, world-weary, drinking, smoking private eye from the 40s and 50s.
Okay.
And it is set in present day, but it harkens back to that time. And he's after a missing teenager who went missing on New Year's Eve.
Oh.
And it is based, what I tried to have it emulate was Ross McDonald, where Ross McDonald was a great author. He had a private eye called Lou Archer, and all of his stories are spider webs. Or like nucleotide DNA models, where one suspect leads to another that may be unrelated, that leads to another that is unrelated, maybe, and then leads to another and another and another and another, and then maybe circles back to the original mystery, for the original characters in there. So I tried to base it a little bit on that. So there's a lot of characters that come and go, and they're all sort of interconnected.
All right, so that begs the question: are you a pantser, or a plotter, or an outliner? How do you write?
In between.
In between.
Yes, I am a plotter and an outliner.
Okay.
I look at pantsing as going through a cave with a candle.
It is.
Like that.
Oh my gosh, here's a wall. And here's a dead end that I can't get out of. And where did I go?
Well, through all three of us have written all our books pantsing so far. I'm experimenting on plantsing, as it's called.
Well, I write the outline that is, I have the general scenes that I want, but then when I get into the actual writing, it may deviate a little bit, or I find new things to create. I don't do Jeffrey Deaver's way, which is a 160-page outline where all he has to do is fill in the words. If that works for him, great, but I'm not taking 4 months to do my outline. So like one of the challenges I had, of course, is how to fill out a day. So one of my books, I have Mallory going through and doing a bunch of stuff. And I thought, well, that's good. That's good enough. Well, then during my research, I drove the route and pretty much did the things that she did. Said, okay, she's going to go talk to this guy for about 10, 15 minutes. Okay, we'll allow time for that. I was done by noon, where I thought I had the entire day filled out. So now I've got to go back and add stuff, add filler without making it sound like filler.
Mm-hmm. It was very, very, very.
Yeah.
Just so very.
A lot of traffic jams and, slow traffic. And
So going back to so when you write a book, how long, let's talk about in stages. How long does it take you? Because it's really kind of hard to even ask these kind of questions because it's so we all come at it differently. We all come up with ideas differently. We all come up with how we write differently. So, for you, how long does it take for you to generally to get your outline, and then the next stage, the writing process? What does that look like for you?
Normally, the outline may take a week at most, because I really want to think it through. And like I said, I'll change the outline if it needs to be changed. I realized I only had 50,000 words in one of the Peterson series books, so I had to go back and adjust the outline to add more, add a side story in there that I thought was, and then connect everything. The writing may take a year, maybe more sometimes. However, on this latest sci-fi venture, I had the outline in about a week, and then I wrote the entire thing in about 3 months.
Okay. And so your writing session, do you focus on like a certain word count a day or a week, or what does that look like for you?
I try to be disciplined and get up at 5 a.m. And then about 5:30, I'll sit down to write for 45 minutes or give or take. I may write during the day if I have some free time at work.
Mm-hmm.
I may write if I meet a writing friend on Sundays, and we'll do some writing for a couple hours once we both shut up from catching each other up on the week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to write 2,000 words today. Right. I write till either my hand starts hurting because I do write. I write longhand first, and then I type it into into Scrivener. And the only reason I do that is because I can think faster than I can write. So I'm always thinking of the next sentence and where to add, and my mind's wandering while I'm writing. Whereas I can type faster than I think. So I type, then I have to stop and think about the next sentence. So I just write and I write linearly throughout the book. I can't. My mind doesn't work the way some others do, where I can write a later scene or the last scene or something like that. It just doesn't work out because who knows what may happen by the time I get there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right. Yeah. Being a pantser, that doesn't happen.
Nope.
Nope. We're going through this tunnel, and we're going to either come to a dead end. Well, we're going to have to knock down this wall and keep going.
That's right. I wrote the ending of book 4 before I even wrote the very beginning, so it happens. That's what I do.
Weird.
I wrote the ending for my first book before I knew the story.
Yeah.
That was what I wrote to.
Yeah.
It was chaos. I rewrote that ending 6 times.
Oh, wow.
But it wasn't that long, so it was okay.
That's wild. No, I'm stubborn enough. That was the ending. I knew that was the ending, and therefore we were going to get there one way or another.
Physics is a heartless mistress, and so I had to, as I realized, oh, wow, that's wrong.
Oh.
So all your books, all your mystery books, your
Mallory Peterson.
Mallory, thank you. That's under, you got them all together now, right? Under the new publisher. Is that what I got?
I have the first one,
okay.
And I'm looking to get the second and the rest contracted. Also, if the right now the publisher does not want the rest of them, so I'm looking elsewhere. But I have a possibility for the one who's doing the standalone. She was interested in series, so that may come. I may get some word from her in a couple months.
Now, how did you, if you don't mind talking about it, how did you, like, okay, let's say they don't want, and here again, we don't have to talk about this in public because I don't know, NDAs, I don't know. But let's say, they don't want book 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, and this other publisher does. Do you have like a clause where you can get your books back so you can go somewhere else, or how does that look? How does that work?
Currently, I am contracted with this publisher for about 3 years. However, she was nice enough to say, "Hey, if you would like the Canva files that we used to create the cover, you can have that and pass it along to somebody else, or self-publisher, or that way you keep the same theme or look to the whole thing." So she was nice enough that she's offered that.
That's very generous, actually.
It gives you continuity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And how did you find your publishers?
Well, I don't know of any other way except grabbing lists from the internet, doing research, and doing the shotgun approach. Just throw a bunch of stuff out there and see what sticks. And that has been the toughest process because publishers, they're all over the place, and where I think they would really like it, they say, we want this and this and this, and I go, well, I have this and this and this. They don't want it. Yeah. Ditto with agents. Agents are even tougher to get, I think. I haven't had one agent bite. Even and that the whole research on agents is is unfortunately tedious and time consuming and not very positive in the results.
Right.
I mean, we could have a whole
In other
show
words,
on that.
it's depressing. I think all four of us have experienced that.
Yeah.
It is. It's a tough row.
I haven't even tried. I was like, you know, I'm going to.
You saw how depressed we were.
That's right.
Well, I mean, no. When I started, and here again, I've only been doing it just a handful of years, since about 2020. I saw what everybody else is going through, and I'm like, I don't even know if I like this. like I'm going to put it out there and see if there's any viable, you know, and then, you know, people seem to like it, and hey, you know, and I continue on. But had I had to go through all those gatekeepers just to get feedback on if my stuff was any good from the customers or the downstream readers, I don't know if I'd still be here. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's one good thing about indie publishing is you can get it out there immediately, which could be a bad thing. It could be bad.
Yeah.
It could be bad.
Yep.
It can be, because sometimes you get books like the one that me and Jen just listened to from an author we won't name, and
Yeah.
It was awkward.
Well, and see, that's the whole thing about very small presses who don't necessarily do a good job, and self-publishing. I'm in the process now of uploading a lot of my reviews from my review site onto BookBub.
Okay.
And I am to the point, I think I've gone back to, where am I at now? 2015, where at that time I was a part of some review sites. So they would send me books and I thought, ooh, this is cool. Then I realized, oh, shoot, I have to read the books, which, as you recall, seeing my bookcases, that doesn't give me any time to read my books. Right. So, but a lot of those were self-published. You could tell by the covers. You could tell by the whole plot, the goofy characters that don't act like they should. A lot of spelling mistakes, and it was just. And I thought, my whole idea is, yes, I can do self-publishing. If I wanted to do that, anybody can throw up, 50,000 words on Amazon and call themselves an author. Yes, I want the quote unquote legitimacy of going through a publisher.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I think it's also, I don't know. I mean, because depending on how, okay, so first off, yes, I see what you're saying, but it really comes down to, do you treat it like a business or not? And that goes for both traditional and independent authors.
That's true.
Oh, yes, you have to.
And I think, unfortunately, people aren't honest with themselves.
Yep.
When it comes to, I don't know, but
it's like American Idol. Nobody told them that you did so good. No,
but my mom says that I'm a princess.
Right.
Right.
And I'm a dinosaur. So
right. Rawr.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, that's true, though. That's true, because you do have to treat it like a business either way, even if you are traditionally published. And also, you probably put in the same amount of work to get your books out there as we do. It just looks different, right?
Yes.
And so, yeah.
Okay. So you have, what are you working on now? You're working on your horror or?
Well, so I am trying to get the second in the, so the first one was called Night Shadows, and I'm going to stick with the night theme. So the next one's called Night of Wine and Ghosts.
Okay.
And I'm trying to get that out there. And I am doing rewrites on a story I wrote a long time ago with characters from the Mallory Peterson book. And that's a slow go because I keep getting interrupted by more important things. And working and writing, the work in progress is, so I'm writing like I said, a science fiction book, and I finished it, like I said, in about 3-4 months. and I'm writing book 2 on that
Nice.
because I left the first one in a cliffhanger. Now I got to get the guy out of the cliffhanger.
So, do you write multiple books at the same time? Have you ever done that?
Yes, because I'm writing a short story for the Marion County Writers Workshop Scary Story Contest and their literary review that we put out. So
Nice.
I'm taking time off to do a little bit of that short story writing first to get that completed because the deadline's coming up soon, and then I'll go back to the regular book while I'm working on rewrites.
Right.
That's funny.
So I noticed in your bio that I'm looking at where it says you lived in Kewanee, Illinois. Where is that?
Kewanee, it's about 45 minutes north west of Peoria.
Okay.
Southeast of the Quad Cities. It is the self-proclaimed hog capital of the world.
Oh man.
Yes. So I
Can't beat that with a stick.
Lovely.
I lived and worked there for almost 2 years. I was working at the radio station, first job out of college, and so.
Now, the only reason why I ask is because I was born in Southern Illinois, and that's where most of my books are set in the Southern Illinois area. But so I saw that, I'm like, I've never heard that before. Must not be
So I bet
there.
you grew up with fireflies.
Fireflies.
Yeah, fireflies are there.
They're fascinating for us desert rats. Fireflies are fascinating because they don't exist.
Oh, I was like, yeah, we have fireflies. I was like, what's so big?
They
Gotcha.
don't exist in Utah at all.
And honestly, they don't exist down. Well, I think. And here again, that's a totally different topic. But like I think 30 or 40 years ago, there used to be some farther south, but with all the pesticides and everything else, I think it killed most of them. So.
Well, it
Not
does
yours.
relate to writing if you think about the fact that you have to keep your settings pretty relevant. Like, I was sitting here thinking, I was like, I never would have once thought you didn't have fireflies out in Utah. Like, I would have just written it and been like, oh, it's a firefly. No, there isn't.
There's a firefly in Utah. No.
Alien.
You didn't do
That
your
is where-
research. Yeah.
Now it's a paranormal. Why are there fireflies in Utah?
Exactly. Anyway.
But you actually did bring up a good point. That's why you need to research everything
Everything.
you talk about, because there was one time, and I think I've mentioned this before, and like in one of my books, I was talking about the new 20 ounces, and I'm like, I wrote it, and then I had to double check to make sure it came out that year.
Yes.
Because I think I was like, thankfully, of course, my wife is my editor, and she does a fantastic job, and she checks all that stuff for me. So I'm very, very fortunate.
That's awesome.
But
So,
sidetrack.
I do have a question on this is relevant too, Stephen. With research on you said you're working on a sci-fi. How much research do you do on your sci-fis? Or is it a heavy sci-fi or more of a light?
It's light, and I'm using knowledge that I just came up with, and I'm world building as I go along. The research is almost non-existent because a lot of the characters' background and past are mine. So I just take from personal experience and throw it in there. That's why it took me so short a time to write, because I'm writing me. I'm just writing stuff that I've been through, and I try to turn it to kind of a lighthearted story. It's not, there's serious stuff in there, but I try to make light of a lot of things, including Kewanee.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of goes back to, that kind of goes to show you can write what you know, right? You take what you know and you put a little spin on it, and there you go. You have a story.
Well, sure. I wouldn't write a military thriller because I don't know anything about that. So whenever I put in a gun or a weapon or something like that, I have a couple of former military guys in my Tuesday night critique group who will say, no, that's not going to work. You need a more powerful gun for that. Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
Nice.
What do you suggest?
See, this is why it's best. The best is when you can just do a fantasy world with guns, and then you just make up stuff.
Oh man.
That's true. That's funny. All right.
Well,
Wow.
does anybody have any other questions that you can think of?
I have a question to close with, but basically, I like to ask what would you say to new authors and depressed authors to give them hope as they're facing, you face some pretty wild adversity. I kept picturing Ted Burgundy sitting back saying, "Wow, that escalated quickly." So, what hope? I always like to give hope.
Well, you just have to be disciplined and determined. I knew that every time somebody died or closed, I was just going to move on. I was going to go back and start over again and find a way to make it happen. The best advice I can give is just, like I said, keep determined and disciplined. Find your critique groups, and then for new authors or new writers and or depressed, keep writing.
Yeah.
They always say, what's your best advice for writers? Write.
Right.
Yep.
You can make an outline, you can, or not. You can plot out everything to the minutest degree. You can do character profiles. You can do put in your themes and make all your character developments and your plot developments, and you can do all the research in the world you want. But at some point, you have to sit your butt down in that chair, grab the mouse, open a Word document, or take a pen and paper and write.
Yep.
Because if you don't write, it ain't gonna get it done.
That's it.
That's true, and you don't learn from it. So.
That's right.
No.
All right. Well, I think that is perfect. That's a good question to end on. Stephen, thank you so much for spending your time with us this evening. We hope you enjoyed it. And
Yes.
For those of you that want to follow up with Stephen, you can catch him at stephenbrayton.wordpress.com. That's where you can find him, and he also has some newsletters. Not Substack, right? It was. You have a Substack account, so you can go there and find that out. You can catch us if you have a question, or if you have a topic that you'd like us to cover. Be sure to reach out to authorsdilemma@gmail.com. And we're just thrilled that you're here with us. Y'all have a good night, and we'll see you next week. God bless. See you.
Bye.
Thank you.